Welcome to today's episode of Composing Downunder podcast. I'm your host Jemima Bunn, and it's wonderful to be able to have you here today. We have been meeting some great Australian composers and having wonderful conversations, and today we welcome to the discussion of Australian voices composing for band, Claire Petherick. Welcome, Claire.
Hello, Jemima. Thank you for having me.
No worries, it's great to have you here. I guess so far we've just started with questions about your background in music and how you came to music or how music came to you. Could you kind of give us a bit of a...
I think music has just always been in my house. I was really, really lucky to grow up in a house that appreciated music. My parents weren't necessarily, very musical themselves, but they also grew up in musical families. So my grandfather was always in brass bands, and he played in a dance band on the weekends. And on my mum's side, her mum played violin and piano and sang in the Brisbane Municipal Choir. So my parents valued music. We always had Classic FM on in the house, constantly. And so I think I was lucky. I never felt like there was any question about whether or not I could play a musical instrument. It always just felt like a rite of passage. Mm-hmm. I came through the Education Queensland instrumental music program, and we had a relatively, well-established program. So I remember, seeing those kids a couple of years older than me demonstrating the instruments and knowing, yes, I'm going to play that one, and couldn't wait until it was my turn to demonstrate the instruments. And then
what school was that?
So I went to Clinton State School. Mm-hmm. Shout out to Clinton. Hello, Mrs. Addison. And then I went to Gladstone State High School. Mm-hmm. So I went through with Bill Barker. Mm-hmm. And just always knew that's what I was going to do. And thankfully, I think I went to school in a time and a place. I was very lucky to be there in that time, and most of my peers played music, and it was just a big part of the community. And then we were chatting before about the World Projects Festival in Sydney, and I'd always thought I was going to be a music therapist. I went along to that in Year 12, and that was the first time that I met Dr. Hultgren, and we did a workshop with him, and just seeing what he did with us, this ragtag mob of teenagers from Gladstone, and seeing the sounds that he could pull from us and how engaged everybody was with his, rehearsal style, that sort of lit something up in me, and I went, oh, I could do what he does.
Yeah, fantastic.
And so, that's what drew me into the world of instrumental teaching and conducting, and
Wow. And so when you left high school,
mm-hmm.
where did you go to after that to continue study?
I did a year in Rockhampton, actually, which was really useful because I probably hadn't had that performance mindset, so I needed a bit of extra help, and I was really lucky to have lessons with a fantastic flautist, Melissa Heron, who is down here in Brisbane now. And she kicked my butt for a year, and then I went off to QUT.
Okay.
In the days when Ralph was teaching there.
Yep. Yeah. And so did you know he was there?
Yes.
You did.
So
I
went there specifically, yes. Yeah.
And so how, obviously you play flute,
mm-hmm.
and what kind of experience did you have in playing flute when you were at university? What kind of opportunities did you have?
The main performance opportunity was playing in the Wind Symphony there, and obviously doing recitals and those sorts of things. I remember in the first week we were being shuffled off into our small ensemble groups, and everyone wanted to be in flute ensemble, and I went I think I hadn't had very good experiences with flute ensemble. I have since learned that flute ensembles are amazing, but at the time I went, no, I think I'd like to be in a clarinet piano trio, thank you very much. So those were the main things that I was exposed to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so what kind of has motivated you to keep that contact with music throughout your life?
I think it's definitely the sense that these are my people. Mm-hmm. Wherever you go, as soon as you find your music crew, you've got ready-made conversations and ready-made, similar experiences, and you can bounce off each other. So I think it's those connections. We lived in California for a couple of years, and the first thing I did was go and join a community band and a flute ensemble.
There you go.
And it was amazing. And yeah, it was so far from home, but I just walked in and was like, okay, I found my home for the time being. Yeah. So yeah, it's those connections with people, and it's also, the mental side of things, just the way that music relaxes me, and learning through so much about people and places through music also, I think is really important.
And so what took you towards education? Why was performance not going to be your...
I think it was that experience in Sydney. I think it was just sort of seeing how rehearsal done well can be so transformative. And I'm a bit of a pedagogy nerd. I love watching other people rehearse. I've stolen things from so many people and stuck them in my bag of tricks. I really like finding new ways of pulling music out of the students, and welcoming them into that world and those connections, and saying, this is a great place to be.
Obviously, we talked a little bit about your life as a player, and a little bit as a teacher. What drew you towards composing?
I think it was always something that I'd found fun and relaxing. So when I was at school and uni, the composition assignments were always the ones that I was doing when I was meant to be doing maths or something else. I just liked to tinker and explore. I don't think I ever really saw it as much more than something that was fun until after I had kids. That's when I sort of needed more, because I sort of lost that connection to teaching and playing a little bit. And so it was sort of, I remember hearing a podcast that a teacher made, and he used to set his students these things called bags, big, hairy, audacious goals. And I thought, I need a big, hairy, audacious goal. And so it was, okay, I'm going to sit down and try and get a piece of music written and published, even if it's just for beginner band. And that was probably about the year 2012 or something.
Right.
It took a really, really, really long time to actually sit down and do it. But yeah, it was about just trying to stay connected when I was away from
because you were
my
looking
people.
after children.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So it kept you, I guess, not only involved in that community, but that you were talking about that kind of emotional, mental health, relaxing moment was enabled through composing as well.
Yeah, absolutely. You get into that state of flow, and that's right.
When you think about the work that you've done in composition so far, is there anything that you think you are pursuing in your compositions, or a sound or something that attracts you?
I'm still very much experimenting. I think because I do have such a strong teaching background, I really find it very hard to separate, the composer from the teacher. A lot of what I write, I'm always thinking, okay, can my students do this? Is this going to be the best way to write that? Have I cross-scored this enough in case I don't have a tenor saxophone in that ensemble? I'm always thinking about those sorts of things. And I think sometimes that probably restricts maybe your Sometimes it restricts your creativity, but at other times it forces you to be more creative because you have to find solutions to things. Yeah. I remember seeing Brian Balmasius speaking about this, and he sort of said, don't think about what they can't do, think about all the things they can do. So trying to remember that when I write. I also just want to write music that has the students humming and bouncing out the door at the end of rehearsals, or tells them a good story, and maybe makes them want to pursue, a bit more research into whatever or whoever I'm writing about. Yep. So I think that's probably forefront in my mind when I'm writing. The sound will come. I'm still getting there, I think.
So you think you're still kind of developing your own sound?
Yeah, definitely.
What do you do toward? Is that a conscious?
I think it's that going from the rules of what you sort of learn through university and to being confident enough to break those rules and go, no, this will still work even if I've not done X, Y, and Z. Yep. So for me, it's I'm at that point where I'm experimenting a little bit and trying to get away from those rules, I guess.
Yeah, and I guess writing for young band, there are quite a lot of rules. There are. I mean, I know that you were saying before about thinking about what they can do, but there are. Writing for a grade 4 or above, you have almost limitless ability.
Yes.
But when you are writing for young band,
that's right.
There are things to consider.
That's right. Are they ready to play a C sharp on the clarinet yet? Yes. I think they probably can.
Yes. And I guess also that thought of, well, they might not have played C sharp yet, but perhaps this is part of their journey.
The way to get there. Exactly. Yeah.
So do you think that your character comes through as you compose, through the music?
To a degree. So something like Cradle Song, it's my other hat, it's my mum hat that comes through in that one. And it's telling that story, which I suppose is my story, that idea that composition is autobiographical. So certainly in something like Cradle Song, something like Between the Hills, with that, it was definitely my teacher hat that I had on. So for example, sometimes we want students to learn or practice a particular skill, but they might not do it of their own volition. So Between the Hills uses, that da 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 da, and suddenly, you're doing your lips,
yes.
and that's the changing time signatures and those sorts of things.
And the silence.
Yes, and the gaps, and I wrote it for the gap.
Yes.
So I intentionally put gaps in the music, and again, it's the ensemble stopping and starting together and those sorts of things. So, probably. My mum hat and my teacher hat come through pretty strongly.
I see this as your first work. This is probably the first work that I saw
Mm-hmm.
out there, which was the butterfly. You can tell us a bit about how that kind of evolved.
Oh. So again, yeah, that was the first piece that I sort of sat down and attempted to write when I was overseas and sort of disconnected from everybody. And I think from memory, I think the idea of the butterfly was really strong. So I went searching for a folk song that was butterfly themed.
Yep.
And found the butterfly, that slipjig, the Irish slipjig. And yeah, it sort of evolved from there. The idea of sort of having to recreate yourself, okay, is basically where that comes from. I was a long way from home. I didn't have my friends around me. I was like, what am I going to do? Okay, I'll sit down and write some music. Let's do something that's, with a theme of recreation, I suppose. So that's where that came from.
Was that conscious at the time, or something in reflection?
I think it was conscious at the time. Yeah. And so that's why there's that sort of reflective part at the beginning, which is completely original, and then it goes into the sort of variations on that folk tune, getting sort of wilder and wilder and wilder, and sort of revving myself up to go. Right? Can do this.
Yes. Could you tell us a little bit about your process as you're composing? How do you start?
Yeah, the ideas come from so many places, and my phone memo is full of like little ideas.
Yeah.
And sometimes
that you sing into.
Sing into, or just it can be the smallest thing. So, for example, there's I think it's a tam tam scraped with a coin at the beginning of I Am, Andrew Boyson, and I just that's such a great sound. I want to use that sound. And to me, it sounds like a comet or a shooting star. So it sort of was the impetus for a piece about stars and twinkling and then we talked about Cradle Song. That was the mobile hanging above the boy's bed and between the hills, wanting to do something more educational. Then there's things like I'm a sucker for podcasts and interviews. I love Richard Fidler. I love Nundah and Brush with Fame, and hearing all these people's stories. So sometimes I'm inspired by somebody's story, and I think, I'd really like to write about that person. So that's where Connie Jordan comes from. Yep. She's so fascinating, and I just think everyone needs to hear about her story. And Alec Campbell, who was the last surviving Anzac, he inspired a piece that I wrote as well, because his words to Ray Martin, who was interviewing him, were, just have a go. That was his advice for life, have a go. And I woke up the next morning just thinking, have a go. And the melody sort of just came from there. Yep. It comes from all sorts of places. Connie was written originally in C major. Yep. I was thinking C for Connie, so I was writing just all these different chord progressions with C all the way through them, and that's how the original chord progression sort of came about. And then changed it into a different key because that didn't work. It comes from so many.
So once places. You have your idea, what happens next? Then
you sit down with some manuscript paper and a keyboard and you try and spin something out. I'm still learning how to do that well. I'm really, really good at writing the first couple of minutes. And then, Andrew Boyson again, he's a really good role model in that regard. He can take 4 notes and turn it into 7 minutes of music. So I sort of, study his stuff sometimes and think, okay, well, you can use it melodically, or you can use it aleatorically, or you can use it in the chord progression, and try and find a way to continue things on. But trying to avoid, I grew up playing a lot of that American fast, slow, fast sort of thing. So trying to get away from that and trying not to be too predictable is a big part of the process. And then, usually once I've got a rough sketch, that's when I sort of will start orchestrating things out and thinking what colour do I want to play that, and do I want to feature, what combinations of instruments do I want to feature here and there.
Are you a piano player?
No.
So it's plodding through.
Yeah, it's plodding through. But I do get my various wind and brass instruments out and play the various lines and try to find the best phrasing, and sometimes alter notes here and there if fingerings are awkward and that sort of thing. So I do try and play the lines through on my instruments.
On your instruments as well. Yeah. How did you learn those instruments? How did that happen?
It's pretty messy. It started out with flute, and then my brother played trumpet, so I used to steal his trumpet and play it in the car in the garage so he couldn't hear me.
She's fessed up now. It's out in the world now.
And then so picked up trumpet. Through uni we had to do second study instruments, so you pick up, it's pretty easy if you know flute to pick up saxophone and clarinet, and then I was really lucky to do instrumental summer schools with Bruce Pearson a couple of years in a row. That was fantastic. I still use his ideas when I'm teaching my beginners today. Just picking them up along the way, really.
So actually going out and seeking that information.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a really important thing for young or up-and-coming composers to do, is to, if they are a pianist, to go and learn some other instruments and see what they're technically capable of doing, so that, you're writing with those technical, capabilities in mind.
Yep.
Yeah.
As you, you said that you write generally on manuscript and you get that together. Mm-hmm. What happens to the manuscript when it's basically going?
So I'll then usually chuck it into Sibelius, and then I write very nice emails to my friends and say, hey, do you have a group that might be able to handle playing this? Or I'll put it in front of my students if it's the right level for them, and we'll play it through and we'll actually see what works, and I'll go, back to the drawing board with that one. I do try and put it in front of a group and see how it works in real life.
Yep.
And then go back to the drawing board.
Yeah,
a lot.
But I guess in having done that, over a few years, you develop a repertoire of knowing how to fix things.
Yes.
Or yes, I wrote that last time and that didn't work. I should,
exactly.
I guess there's quite a lot of a reflection process in that as well.
Yeah, most definitely.
Yeah. Have you ever had a piece that you went, that was just atrocious? I don't even know why I put that out in the world.
Yeah. times. Sometimes it's my writing, and sometimes it's that the ensemble's not quite ready for it.
Yeah.
Or that the conductor has completely misinterpreted.
Things.
Yeah. Which has made me learn. I think I have to be more specific about my instructions in the score. Even with Cradle Song, the girls are doing it here at the moment, and I sit down in their lessons with them, and I write, the composer really should have put an extra writ in here, and those sorts of things. And I think that's a learning curve. It's not wanting to be too prescriptive with the conductor, and sort of trusting that they'll be a good enough musician to know how to interpret things. But I think I probably need to give a little more.
Have you ever been surprised when you hear a performance and like, oh, I wish I'd written it like that, or because a conductor has put in an extra slow down, or
I probably haven't put enough into the world yet to have that experience. I think that's coming.
Yeah, okay.
But there was a really interesting session on that very topic at Midwest. Just gone. The composer as conductor, and a lot of those composers sort of saying, oh yeah, I wish I'd done that. So
just learning from each other, I guess.
Exactly.
Yeah. So who has influenced you as a composer?
I mean, obviously I came through Ralph's instruction at QUT, so there's definitely a lot of his influence.
Were they actually composing classes?
Yeah. We did orchestration, where we learnt the basics, and then we did ranging, where we sort of took things that extra step. We had sort of more advanced jazz-based writing techniques, where we sort of went into modal things and extended chords and those sorts of things. I mentioned Andrew Boyson before. I really would like to be him when I grow up. I just love how he can take the simplest things and turn it into a whole piece. I'm inspired by people like Carol Britton Chambers, Anne McGinty. I love Anne McGinty's stuff. I love sitting down and studying her scores and just going, how did you do that? Yeah. Who else inspires me? I love a lot of the Australian, not necessarily wind band composers either. I really enjoy hearing people like Brenda Gifford. She's an Indigenous composer who is a classically trained saxophone player, but she incorporates her culture into her pieces. I love a composer called Eric. I think you say Iwazen, I think is how you say his surname. He writes beautiful combinations as well. His flute, horn and piano trio is gorgeous.
That's a combination we don't hear a lot
No, I love the start of Franz Biebel's Ave Maria. He uses the low register of the flutes and the French horns together through there. Yeah. It's such a nice combination. And I really like Valerie Coleman, who's an African-American composer, and she writes for her group, I think they're called Imani Winds. It's just full of colour. I think I'm drawn to those composers who use a lot of colour and a lot of texture.
So I was actually, just as you were talking then, I was just thinking about, so you mentioned how you've looked at Anne McGinty's scores. Mm-hmm. Do you do that a lot, of looking at other people's work?
Not as much as I should.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But it's really the only way to learn how to do this. I know going through with Ralph, that was what he would always suggest to us. Write stuff, put it in front of people, see if it works. Look at scores, listen to music. If you like a sound, go and find the score and go, oh, how did they do that? Yeah. Anne McGinty's a genius, and I know she's well regarded, but I still think she's underrated.
Yeah. Yeah, she's been around for a very long time.
Yeah.
And the work she's produced have had a longevity
that's right.
in the repertoire. It's not just a one-off.
No, that's right.
And many good things.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. We've just talked about some people who might have influenced you as a composer. Do you have some pieces that have influenced you, or?
I can't think of anything specifically, because it's just bits and pieces from all over the place. It's like, like I was saying, with watching conductors and sort of stealing little bits and pieces, I probably, you get to a point where you almost avoid listening to too many things on rotation, because I'm afraid that I'm accidentally going to incorporate, an entire melody of somebody else's. Mm-hmm. So I'm quite careful just to pick little bits and pieces of inspiration. Mm-hmm. I don't know about entire pieces, actually. Yeah, I'm quite careful about it.
Yeah. Do you have anything on rotation at the moment? Something that you're enjoying listening to?
The only time I really listen to music is when I'm driving.
Yep.
So I grew up in an ABC Classic FM household, so that's what I have on, and I love being just surprised by what it throws at me every day. And I love the connection to people as well of just listening to the radio, because people write in about how that piece affected them, and again it's that collection of stories and how music affects people. Mm-hmm. Feeling of being connected, you feel like you're connected to the whole country some mornings. So I love that. If I'm at home, I'll listen to music when I'm cooking, and it's usually Ella Fitzgerald or 90s Australian rock. I'm not gonna lie.
She's admitted it. It's out there now. So what kind of challenges have you faced as a composer?
We sort of alluded to some of them before. It's that getting past set rules. Mm-hmm. It's having the confidence to do my own thing, free, I think, from the teacher mentality sometimes. Kids can do more than you realise. That's certainly a challenge. Just finding the time is a challenge. And I think my technical capacity has to catch up to my ideas.
Okay. Yep.
So I'm very much still learning. Yeah.
Do you think that over the time you've been, all the pieces that you've been looking at, that your style has changed or is evolving?
Yeah. I think I was braver a few years ago.
Okay.
Yeah, I feel like I've maybe gotten too stuck at the moment, and I need to just go back to. I need to get away from writing for baby beginner bands, because that's been my teaching for the last few years. So we've talked about this with Zombies, right? That I wrote that for a specific ensemble that had specific problems, and it was about trying to solve those problems. But from a commercial point of view, having to completely change that to reflect a broader market, those sorts of things. So that's been a real struggle.
That's quite a challenge in a lot of commissioning works, is because that's what you're doing, is writing it for a specific group.
Yeah, that's right.
And that group may have this amazing euphonium player.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, not all of our ensembles have that opportunity, so we do have to think about it a little differently.
Yeah. So, just trying to break away from teacher brain. Yeah. And into creative brain sometimes is the hardest thing for me.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. All right. So, do you think that in your experience as a player and as a composer, do you think that there is an Australian voice in wind band composition?
I think that question would have been really easy to answer maybe 25 years ago. Because there were probably only, 6 well-known people writing for wind band music in Australia, and they all sort of came from a similar school, if you like, and with similar traditions and backgrounds.
Which was?
Well, the sort of British military band, brass band sort of background coming into the wind band. So there's a couple of things that have happened in that time. Obviously, the diversity of composers writing and bringing their voices and their stories with them has changed dramatically. And the second thing that's really changed in Australia is we've gone from primarily being a place where the wind bands come from our school program, and there were a couple of university ensembles, and there was some good military groups, and that's who we were writing for. So, or community groups as well. So, you were writing for, you're trying to write in a sort of elastic way that whichever Joe Bloggs showed up to your community band on a Tuesday night, your piece would work for them. But the ensembles have become so much more sophisticated, I think, in the last few years. You've got amazing university bands, and an ensemble like the Queensland Wind Orchestra, it's freaking amazing. And bringing such incredible composers to the light. So it's really changing. But we had that chat a couple of months ago about female composers in particular. It seemed to have a different style. It seems to be, which is maybe a little bit more transparent and light. And I think Australians bring maybe that idea of a more expansive landscape with them. Perhaps you listen to American music and it's very, they wear their patriotism on their sleeve, and you can hear that coming through in their music. Whereas we're a little bit more reserved with our patriotism, and if they're writing about their countryside, they've got canyons and mountains and rivers, and there's so much, and we're just sparse, which is beautiful in its own way, but trying to reflect that musically is very different.
Yes,
I think.
Yeah. So there is an environmental element.
I think so.
And I think also it's a very difficult thing to pin down because it is very much an experience.
Definitely.
And as you mentioned earlier, we started off with a lot of folk songs, which are traditionally English, came from an English background, and that brass band kind of world that came through. And it's just interesting to explore over time. I guess around 1988, when there was the first contests, that was our bicentenary year of the first landing. Yeah. So we were in a patriotic, reflect upon our background, and now the country is looking in a different way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I wonder about this. I wonder about Brolga's philosophy on this as well. The idea of publishing music that's very patriotic and Australia Day. Are we allowed to play that anymore?
We've had our moments. We've had our moments of patriotism.
Yeah. So I think that's definitely in the back of my mind. The type of music that I want to be writing. I feel like I don't want to misrepresent anybody or anything, and
that's certainly a question of the moment, isn't it? Yeah. As we talk about a voice to Parliament and representation and things like that, that is certainly a question that we all have. About maybe it's quite a formative time in our identity.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I think it's going to be really interesting, the types of music that we produce in the next few years. And because of we're reflecting on things.
How exciting. It's so exciting to think what's possible. So what would you like performers to know about your music that they may not know? I want them to realise, I think is what we said before, that I'm not going to put every writ in there, and I want them to interpret it and not be too black and white about what's on the page, and to please read the program notes. Again, I'm still learning how to do this, and I think the character will come a little bit more as I learn, what my own voice is, and learn how to get that onto the paper a little bit more. I don't know. That's a really hard question. That's the whole idea. Do you have any advice for people who want to get into composing, or?
Yeah, you just have to do it.
Yep.
You just have to set yourself a goal and give it a go. Talk to a lot of people, try and get your music played, get the feedback. As I was saying before, try and get your hands on some instruments and learn how they function. But just, write for your own instrument first, maybe, so that you work out the perks of that. And then, just sort of move on from there, really. But just have a go.
Have a go. It's been so interesting just listening to, I guess, as a relatively younger composer,
It's kind.
Not well, newer
learning,
composer, learning,
yeah.
evolving, but it's also quite humbling to hear that there is that evolution. That it's not I am a composer. There is something to keep learning about yourself, about the art, the craft of composition. So I really appreciate that you've been able to share that with us, because I think that's one of the things is that we come in thinking we should be fully formed, ready to go, or I've had my first work published, I'm fully formed and ready to go. But
no, I think if anything, that's taught me how much more I need to learn. Yeah,
and I guess as you were saying before, just developing your own confidence with what you're writing, and that you are giving something of yourself. To
very intimidating and nerve-wracking. Yeah,
but we so appreciate that you do that though, because it's such a unique. It is such a unique voice, and it's just really interesting to see the different works and how you've approached them. So I really appreciate that you have come and talked to us today. Thank you for sharing your thoughts and experiences of Australians' voices composing for band, and it means so much just to hear about your perspective. So thank you, Claire.
Thank you for all your work.
No worries. For our listeners, any links to music and resources and anything we mentioned will be in the show notes. Thanks very much, Claire.
Thanks, Jemima.
Composing Down Under, Australian Voices Composing for Band is sponsored by Brolga Music Publishing, Australia's finest musical voice.